So yeah, I am back. Can you hear me? Um, okay, so there was a report released. Um, hopefully that. Oh, I don't see that on my screen. Is a bit. There's a bit of a delay. Um, so United Nations scientists in the International Panel on Climate Change released a report. Scientists deliver final warning on Oh, yeah. Released the report, the sixth report. It's called a synthesis report. And this is an article from um, the Guardian about that report. And it's called Scientists Deliver Final Warning on Climate Crisis. Act now or it's too late. And yeah, the IPCC, which is the International Governmental Panel on Climate Change. Oh, I have a phone call, so I'll have to pause. So yeah, it was uh, a scam call. I should start adding music or something for you to listen to while there's a break. But anyways, yeah. So it's the final part of the sixth assessment report. It took 8 years to compile and went into thousands of pages, and it has one message: act now, or it'll be too late. Um, the UN Secretary General Antonio, uh, I'm just going to see if I can copy and paste into a name pronounce. Hopefully this works at pronouncing names. Oh, this is loading. Pop-ups.
Guterres.
Guterres. So where was I? Antonio Guterres said, quote, this report is clear, I don't know what that says, clear on call to massively fast track climate efforts clear call by every country in every sector and on every time frame. All world needs climate action on all fronts. Everything, everywhere, all at once. And in the report it says extreme weather caused by climate breakdown has led to the increased deaths from intensifying heat waves in all regions, millions of lives and homes destroyed, and droughts and floods, millions of people facing hunger, and increasing irreversible losses in vital ecosystems. And the other day, I wrote about the Peterborough update on its climate action, um, and it included like some of the disasters that happened in the city of Peterborough, such as the derecho in May, which is a huge windstorm, um, and it left a huge power outage for several days, uh, extreme flooding, and then I added like heat waves and droughts that weren't included in that report. And then people have died in Canada as a result of heat waves. And then it's the last assessment. While the world still has a chance of limiting global temperature rises to 1.5 degrees above industrial levels, in case I'm going to Control C. Hopefully I can. I know this is a slow process, but I want to get people's names as close as possible. There's no. Oh. Kosonen. Do you know Kosonen? Do you know that like internet name pronunciation can be off potentially, so that's something to be mindful of as well. So it says the article says that more than 3 billion people live in areas that are highly vulnerable to climate breakdown. And then it's saying that we have failed to reverse the 200-year trend of rising greenhouse gas emissions despite more than 30 years of warnings from the IPCC. Every year in which emissions continue to rise eats up available carbon budget and means more drastic cuts will be needed in future years. And Hu-Sung Lee, the chair of the IPCC, said the synthesis report underscores the urgency of taking more ambitious action and shows that if we act now, we can still secure a sustainable future for all. Richard Allen, a professor of climate change science at the University of Reading, said in this article, every bit of warming avoided due to collective action pulled from our growing, increasingly effective toolkit of options is worse news for societies and ecosystems on which we all depend. And then I highlighted some. Oh, I guess I didn't. So we still have time to act, but the window to act is running out quickly. um, and we have to act as soon as we can to mitigate the effects of climate change, because if we pass the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold, uh, it will be irreversible damage to from climate. Um, but that's something. Um, but if we act now, it will be better for current and future generations. Um, we should get out of this. I believe that we should get out of the mindset that climate change impacts future generations. I I'm in my 30s. I think it impact. I plan on being over 60s, and um, the if we change if we reduce emissions now as a society, we'll have better life outcomes as a result of changes that we make today. Um, and it's not for grandchildren anymore. It's for us. We all are grandchildren. But some people, they only care about their grandkids. So, um, but we have to be mindful of that. It's for ourselves that we're doing this um, now, and we can't wait to take action, and that means getting involved in politics, pressuring the government to change their policies, um, and then yeah, a lot of it is the result of government decisions, and some of it is personal changes, um, as well. So being a role model for others is good. Like starting composting if there's no compost in your city, then doing a backyard compost, for example. Um, the taking the bus when you don't need to. Um, walking more often. Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, so let's see. I don't know. I didn't highlight anything from the IPCC, and if it's thousands of pages, might not have time to go through them on the stream. So the synthesis. But I can read headline statements and summary for policymakers, the press releases. So headline statements. Let's see. So this is manageable. I might be able to talk about. Headline statements. Absorbed warning and its causes. Human activity um, through emissions of greenhouse gases have unequivocally caused global warming, and with global surface temperatures reaching 1.1 degrees Celsius above 1850 to 1900, in 2011 to 2020. Global greenhouse gas emissions have continued to increase with unequal historical and ongoing contributions arising from unsustainable energy use, and land use change, life cycles, and patterns of consumption. So that's what the land use change is one of my one thing that was left off of the Peterborough update on climate action emissions. Update on greenhouse gas emissions in the city of Peterborough. So observed changes and impacts, widespread and rapid changes in the atmosphere, ocean, cryosphere, and biosphere have occurred, already affecting many weather and climate extremes in every region across the globe. Adverse impacts, and then vulnerable communities who have contributed the least to climate change are disproportionately impacted. Current progress in adaptation and gaps and challenges. Adaptation planning and implementation has progressed across all sectors and regions with documented benefits and varying effectiveness. Despite progress, adaptation gaps exist and will continue to grow at current rates of implementation. So there needs to be more action. Hard and soft limits to adaptation have been reached in some ecosystems and regions. Maladaptation is happening in some sectors and regions. I don't know what that is, but it sounds bad. Current global financial flows for adaptations are insufficient for and constrained implementation of adaptation options, especially in developing countries. Current all countries of the global south so the next headline is current mitigation progress, gaps, and challenges. Policies and laws addressing mitigation have constantly expanded since the last report. AO5 and it's more likely that global warming will exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius during the 21st century and make it harder to limit warming below 2 degrees Celsius. Future climate change risks and long-term responses. Future climate change, continued greenhouse gas emissions will lead to increasing global warming, with the best estimate of reaching 1.5 degrees in the near term in considered scenarios and modeled pathways. Every increment of global warming will intensify multiple and concurrent hazards. Deep, rapid, and sustained reductions in greenhouse gas emissions would lead to a discernible slowdown in global warming within around 2 decades, and also discernible changes in atmosphere composition within a few years. For any given future warming level, many climate-related risks are higher than assessed in AO5, and projected long-term impacts are up to multiple times higher than currently observed. Risks and projected adverse impacts and related losses and damages from climate change escalate with every increment of global warming. Climatic and non-climatic risks will increasingly interact, creating compound, cascading risks that are more complex and difficult to manage. So that's why we have to act now, because if we don't act now, it'll be more difficult to make the necessary changes. Likelihood and risks of unavoidable, irreversible, or abrupt changes. Some future changes are unavoidable and are irreversible, but can be limited by deep, rapid, and sustained global greenhouse gas emissions reductions. So we're going to face some impacts. And then the likelihood of abrupt and or reversible changes increase with higher global warming levels, especially above 1.5 degrees and 2 degrees. Um, um, Adaptation options that are feasible and effective today will be constrained and less effective with increasing global warming. Um, Losses and damages will increase, and additional human and natural systems will reach adaptation limits. Maladaptation can be avoided by flexible, multi-sectoral, inclusive long-term planning and implementation of adaptation actions. Carbon budgets and net zero emissions. Limiting human-caused global warming requires net zero CO2 emissions. Cumulative carbon emissions until the time of reaching net zero CO2 emissions and the level of greenhouse emission reductions this decade largely determine whether warming can be limited to 1.5 or 2 degrees. So the idea that we can wait till 2050 to reach net zero, um, it's not, we're not acting fast enough. We have until 2030 to reach 20 net zero, and probably before 2030. Um, yeah. Mitigation pathways. Oh, I'm just gonna. Okay. I wasn't sure if there was someone in the chat. All global modeled pathways that limit warming to 1.5 degrees with no limited overshoot, and those that limit warming to 2 degrees involve rapid and deep and, in most cases, immediate greenhouse gas emissions reductions in all sectors this decade. Global net zero CO2 emissions are reached for those pathway categories in the early 2050s and around the early 2070s, respectively. If warming exceeds a specified level, such as 1.5, it could gradually be reduced again by achieving and sustaining net negative global CO2 emissions. So this is going beyond net zero. And additional deployment of carbon dioxide removal. And some of the impacts are irreversible. Responses in the near term. Urgency of near-term integrated climate action. Climate change is a threat to human being and planetary health. There's a rapidly closing window of opportunities to secure a livable and sustainable future for all. The choices and actions implemented in this decade will have impacts now and for thousands of years. So we have to definitely act now. The benefits of near-term action, deep, rapid, and sustained mitigation, and accelerated implementation of adaptation actions in this decade would reduce projected losses and damages for human and ecosystems, deliver many co-benefits, especially for air quality and health. Delayed mitigation and adaptation action would lock in high emissions infrastructure, raise risks of stranded assets and cost escalation, reduce feasibility, and increase losses and damages. Near-term actions involve high upfront investments and potentially disruptive changes that can be lessened by a range of enabling policies. Oh, I'm almost finished. Okay. Mitigating and adaptation options across systems. Rapid and far-reaching transitions across all sectors and systems are necessary to achieve deep and sustained emissions reductions and secure a livable, sustainable future for all. These system transitions involve significant upscaling of wide portfolio of mitigation and adaptation options, and feasible, effective, low-cost options for mitigation and adaptation are already available with differences across systems and regions. And I think we should have a lot of natural systems as well, like paving over wetlands. That's not going to reduce emissions. Synergies and trade-offs with sustainable development. Sustainable development has its own problems. Um, Sustainable is poorly defined. Um, I learned that in university. Accelerated and equitable action in mitigating and adapting to climate change impacts is critical to sustainable development. Mitigation and adaptation actions have more synergies and trade offs with sustainable development goals. Synergies and trade offs depend on context and scale of implementation. Equity and inclusion, prioritizing equity, climate justice, social justice, inclusion, and just transition processes can enable adaptation and, and ambitious mitigation actions and climate resilient development. Adaptation outcomes are enhanced by increasing support to regions and people with highest vulnerability to climatic hazards. Governments and policies. Effective climate action is enabled by political commitment, well aligned multi level governance, institutional frameworks, laws, policies, and strategies, and enhanced access to finance and technology. Um, Finance, technology, and international cooperation. Finance, technology, and international cooperation are critical enablers for accelerated climate action. If climate goals are to be achieved, both adaptation and mitigation financing would need to increase manyfold. There was significant global capital to close the global investment gaps, but there are barriers to redirect capital to climate action. Enhancing technology innovation systems is key to accelerate the widespread adaptation of technology and practices. And international cooperation is possible through different channels. Oh, it says there's a longer report coming soon, and the full volume is coming soon. Um, let's see. I don't see anyone in chat, so I won't um, I won't watch the presentation. Um, but I'm going to take a small break, and when I come back, I will talk about the environmental impact assessment and a blog that I found. Um, and maybe a plan to look at French, but I will talk about that